Numinous Podcast with Carmen Spaniola.
Hi there, and welcome to the Numinous Podcast, where we have interesting conversations with everyday folks about the mystery of life. I'm your host, Carmen Spaniola, joining you from the lands of the Insilkshin-speaking peoples of the Okanagan Nations on our small farm just outside of a small town known as Summerland, BC. Grab a hanky because I am living close to the waterworks lately, folks. I was not able to keep it together through this interview. And that tracks completely because I actually don't believe in trying to suppress emotions. And I don't actually mind crying in the middle of an interview at all. But I just want to let you know this one, I get a little emotional. But yeah, as I say, I don't mind that because it's not every day that you know your guest is going to hold you in such deep care and dignity. My guest today is the warm and wonderful Erinn Doncaster, here today to share about their new venture, a project called Find Your Song. Erinn's combined background in music education and event production, as well as social work, trauma counseling, and somatic experiencing and group therapy, has all culminated in this project that weaves together these threads. Erinn is a non-binary, queer, newly disabled white settler with way back roots in the Scottish Hebrides via 8 generations in Nova Scotia. The project, Find Your Song, is a series of musical collaborations and explorations, including the upcoming Songwriting to Meet the Moment retreat. It's happening November 19th to 22nd in Nanaimo, BC, on gorgeous Vancouver Island. These are my homelands, the homelands of my heart. Well, I will say I grew up in Duncan, and Nanaimo is kind of like the next big town. It's bigger than Duncan, especially now, but in the 80s, there was a big hockey rivalry between Duncan and Nanaimo. And even, basketball and different, track and field, all that kind of stuff you do in elementary, middle, high school. We were always competing against Nanaimo. Again, slightly bigger town, so they often won. But I know these lands well, dear to my heart. You will need to take a ferry across the Salish Sea to get to Nanaimo if you're not from the island. And just so you know, if you've never been to this part of the world, it is very often a breathtaking experience. Riding the ferry, if you have to do it regularly, super sucks if you live there, if you're commuting. Which at various times in my life, I have had to travel like weekly on BC ferries. And man, I never thought I'd say this, but you miss it. You do miss it when you don't do it anymore, especially, in November, if you take an early morning ferry and you happen to get a sunny day, just gorgeous. But even if it's like moody, fall, foggy, it's very often, as I say, a breathtaking experience. It's like having a little cruise. Anyway, I digress. Registration for the Songwriting to Meet the Moment retreat closes on August 22nd. So I'm very glad that we managed to align schedules so you can all hear why Erinn's work is so much more than it seems. Just listen to this interview. I think you'll understand what I mean. So, Erinn, what identities do you lead with?
Well, I was expecting this question, and it's interesting. Like this is kind of a tricky question for me to answer these days because I'm in a period of my life where I'm really enjoying kind of intentionally not identifying with any labels. And what that practice is doing for me is actually helping to kind of dissolve this leftover layer of, thinking about how might other people perceive, or how do I think I should be, or how do I think other people are perceiving me? Like it's really allowing for kind of a more organic and authentic expression of myself to come out. So it's a hard question for me to answer. And um, I get like it's useful for people to have some kind of reference points about like what are the lenses that I see the world through. So I can share I am a queer non-binary human. I was assigned female at birth, so I grew up as a daughter and a sister, and I'm currently grappling with perimenopause, as one does.
Yeah.
Um, I am a white settler. My ancestry is largely Scottish, from the Hebrides. And I grew up on the east coast of Canada in Mi'kmaq Territory in Nova Scotia. And I've been out here on the west coast of Canada for close to 20 years now. And that most of that time I've been on Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. And I used to be kind of on the south part in Coast Salish territory. And more recently, in the last 5, 6 years, I've been kind of mid-island. So sort of where the transition point is between Coast Salish territories and Kwakwaka'wakw territories. Um, by training, I'm a social worker, counselor, trauma therapist, somatic experiencing practitioner, and I am also a human who really loves music, and I love singing with other people. And I really love helping other people to get to experience the same joy from singing with other people that I do.
I'm really happy to witness. I've known you in those other capacities, but this I've only gotten glimpses into the singing or heard about the singing, and I'm so delighted to be here for the era where it's like
Hmm.
the resurrection or the renewal of centering music in your life. Because I've
Yeah.
only heard you sing a few times. It's been so beautiful. Can you tell us what is singing resistance? What is the singing resistance movement? And how does this
Hmm.
new offering of yours, Find Your Song, fit into it?
Yeah, the singing resistance movement is so cool. So I'm gonna answer a little bit backwards. So Find Your Song is my new project, and basically it's sort of a combination of my music education and my clinical backgrounds. And what I'm doing with this project is producing events and workshops and retreats where we're kind of leveraging the power of making music together, along with all the things that I know about the human nervous system and secure attachment and interpersonal neurobiology. And we're doing this to basically to help folks increase their capacity to live and thrive in and like meet these wild times that we're in. And really we're doing that by helping folks reconnect with themselves and with each other and with their joy. And there's a lot more to say about it, but that's sort of the context of the project. And then the connection with singing resistance is that one of the workshops that we have coming up in November, it's actually a 4 day kind of a retreat. It's called Songwriting to Meet the Moment. And what it is, we're going to have 4 days together with three facilitators. So myself and Carla Mundy and Serena Partridge. And we're going to be practicing writing tiny songs or songlets, as Serena calls them, that are really about meeting the moments that we're in. And that can mean anything, but really, so Serena is just this amazing gem of a human. She's a song leader, a songwriter from Minneapolis, and she's one of our facilitators. Um, so she is going to be teaching us how to write these songs that one of the things that has happened with her for her songs is she's used them in these direct actions, and she's used them to help community um, coalesce and connect and like get motivated and act together. Like it's amazing stuff. So the singing resistance, oh, it's so powerful. So I imagine most of your listeners probably know the context of what's been happening in Minneapolis. Um, for those who don't, so back in the winter, especially of just this past year, uh, there was this massive, it was Operation Metro Surge. So the U.S. Department of Homeland Security launched this huge immigration enforcement operation that was really, really scary. There were a lot of ICE agents and Customs and Border Protection folks, and they were going door to door. They were arresting like thousands of people, um, regardless of whether they were in the US legally or not. People were murdered, like ICE agents murdered people. It was bad. It was a really bad time, and it was super, super scary.
And it
And
continues today.
it continues today. Yeah.
Mhm.
My I could be wrong about this. My understanding is that like the most kind of intense period of it was over the winter, but it's absolutely continuing today. And not just in Minneapolis, in other parts
Mhm.
of the US as well.
Mhm.
Um, but one of the things that happened in Minneapolis was there was a lot of community organizing and pushback that was happening in some really beautiful ways. Um, if you don't know about it, like people should look it up because it's just really beautiful. But um, one of the ways that resistance was happening was through singing resistance. So there was a small group of folks who in quote unquote normal times were community choir leaders and musicians and including Serena. And they started organizing these direct actions where they were using songs to help people kind of stay connected with each other, stay connected with themselves, because when we're singing together, when we're singing, period, it tends to kind of bring us, or it can anyway, bring us into our bodies. And when we're all singing the same thing, there's this shared rhythm that kind of keeps us connected, keeps us oriented to the group, keeps us oriented to the message, like what are we singing about? So, they created these songs that were small and simple and easy to learn and really kind of focused in on like what are we trying to do here? And the effects were just so powerful. So just like to give you a couple of examples, one of the things that they did, I think, quite early on, they walked around, and there was a lot of people. I can't remember the numbers, but like this huge group of people walked through one of the neighborhoods that was most heavily hit, and like what was happening is it was so bad that people were sheltering in place. Like
Mhm.
folks, it wasn't safe for them to leave their homes to buy groceries. It
Mhm.
wasn't safe for them to bring their kids to school. Like people were sheltering in place in their homes.
Mhm.
Um, and so Serena and the singing resistance folks and this group of people, they were walking through this neighborhood and singing.
Do you
Just,
know what they were singing? Like, what would be an example of like, I
I
imagine
don't,
it is kind of a chant, but it goes on for
yeah,
there's like a few lines or verses and you just are
yeah,
repeating it
yeah.
together.
So yeah, so I don't know if this was the one, but one of the ones that they've used, it goes like, hold on. Hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. And then it just repeats over and over again. So that one was written by Heidi Wilson, who's another one of the singing resistance folks, and
Mm,
actually a bandmate of Serena's as well.
mm.
Um, so yeah, and then another one, they sang to ICE agents. They gathered in front of a hotel where many of the ICE agents were staying, and they sang to the ICE agents to let them know that there's an off ramp. Um,
Right.
it's so cool watching these videos. Like it's electric.
Mm.
Um, like what was that? It's okay to change your mind. Show us your courage. Leave this behind. It's okay to change your mind, and you can join us. Join us here anytime. So, stuff like that, these really contained, simple, easy to learn songs, easy to harmonize that a big group of people can connect to really quickly. Um, anyway, I could go on and on and on about the cool work that they've done, and it's actually sort of it's I have this image of a dandelion,
Yeah,
making all these little seeds in my mind. So there are now singing resistance groups all over North America doing really cool work like that.
that's beautiful. It made me well up with tears. It's really beautiful. From I'm having a bodily reaction right now. It is a
Yeah.
feeling of being enfolded into something in a beautiful way.
Yes.
From your perspective as a very experienced somatic experiencing practitioner, say can you say more about what is special Like what happens in our bodies, in our nervous systems. This is for all the like polyvagal geeks out there, like what happens in our bodies and nervous systems when we sing together.
I am so glad that you asked because this is for me like this is the crux of it. This is why this stuff is so cool. So, um, there's a bunch of things that happen, and what I actually think is happening is basically if the conditions are right, and I do want to say like this doesn't always happen, but if the conditions are right, we can dip into these experiences of profound attunement and secure attachment. So what happens is when we're singing together, you talk a lot about contact nutrition, and you know, I'm imagining many of your listeners are
Mhm.
familiar with the idea of vocal prosody and shared rhythm and kind eyes. So these are all elements that are present when we are in a group of people and singing together. And we are so hardwired as human beings to be like deeply, deeply attuned to sound, especially to the sound of other humans' voices, and to shared rhythm. And it's so tied into our sense of safety. And it's also it's part of how we develop our own capacity, our nervous system and body capacity to regulate, both emotionally and physiologically. Like some of our stuff like heart rate and respirators. There's all kinds of stuff that happens in the context, developmental stuff that happens in the context of shared rhythm and vocal prosody and these other elements of contact nutrition. So, like if we think about in being in utero, the first things that we hear are our mother's heartbeat and our mother's voice. So it makes sense, right? That like of course we're hyper attuned to those things. I actually think this is kind of like a nerdy thing. I think there's an argument to be made that safe touch is happening too, because when sound is vibration, like at the most basic science level, it's vibration. So if you think about being in utero and a heart beating, even before we have the sensory kind of mechanisms to hear, I think we can feel it in our little
Mhm.
tiny bodies,
Mhm.
right? So there's this kind of felt sense even like through our skin and our muscles, and I can't remember what's actually happening developmentally at that
Mhm.
stage, but I think that there's an element of safe touch happening there as well.
Mhm.
Um, so what happens is when we're in a group of people singing together and we're connecting with all of these things, all of these elements of contact nutrition, physiologically, there's a bunch of research that suggests that we can start to have this thing called entrainment, where our breathing can start to sync up with the people we're singing with. And that one, I mean, that one's kind of a gimme because if we're singing a song, like there's places where it makes sense to breathe, right? So that one's a bit of a gimme. But our heart rates can start to sync up. Our heart rate variability can start to sync up. And for folks who don't know what that is, it's basically it's kind of a marker or a measurement of how quickly and how smoothly we're able to shift gears into different nervous system states and physiological states to meet the needs of the moment. And we want to have a lot of heart rate variability. It's a good thing. So that can sync up. And as we're having this profound experience of attunement, um, oxytocin increases, cortisol decreases. We're basically moving from either, in polyvagal terms, either sympathetic state, a high kind of activation, maybe a fight or flight state, or potentially moving from a freeze state into that ventrovagal parasympathetic. Things can kind of settle into that space where, um, to shift metaphors, we're inside of our windows of tolerance. We have the capacity to be present with ourselves, with the people around us, with our environments. Um, it's amazing. I do want to name though, like this is the potential, but I do think like as I've thought about this more and more through the lens of secure attachment, I think for me, I think that explains why sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. um, because singing can carry a lot of stuff for a lot of people, right? Um, it can be really vulnerable. We can have all kinds of, thoughts about, maybe I'm not good enough, or there's all kinds of stuff that can happen there, right? And I think that yeah, I've been around enough choirs and enough community choirs and enough other amazing music events um, that I'm starting to really see clearly the differences. Like when is this
Mhm.
happening and when is it not happening and what are the conditions? And I think it has a whole lot to do with secure attachment.
Oh, like 100%. And in my book that's coming out in November, How to Connect, I tell a story about how I took singing lessons because
Mm,
it was, I not only could I not sing in public, it was like so, I was so afraid of it, but there's all this other, there's the metaphor upon metaphor upon metaphor of like not
of course, yeah.
having your own voice or being silenced or being
Yeah.
shamed or being, and so stuff, it really felt like my voice would just disappear or it would completely contract as though like I even have had experiences where I'm like, is this what anaphylaxis feels like? Because it's so,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and of course, the idea of singing in a group, it's like not only am I feeling flooded so I can't get my voice out, but now the story of I'm going to ruin this for everyone else. I'm not only going to
Mm-hmm.
stand out because I'm this discordant key, but I am the individual person who is ruining it for everyone. So
Oh.
talk about some attachment stuff coming up, right? I used to put it lightly and joke that I don't even walk down streets with karaoke bars in case I get pushed in. Like I just,
Mm,
like it was like keep me away. So
yeah.
yeah, say a little more. You've been a counselor for a long time, and again we share this kind of like geekery nerdery about attachment. So yeah, how when you see this happening, that somebody is moving out of a feeling of belonging, you can see them
Yeah.
collapsing into themselves. What do you do with this intersection of group singing and contact nutrition? What advice do you give folks who are afraid that they're going to sound totally awful, they're going to ruin the experience for the group, and they will out themselves as the black sheep or the one who doesn't belong?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and my heart is just breaking because what you're describing is so common. Like the number of people who I've talked to who have had a similar experience, or they were the kids who were in school, they were told to mouth the words,
Yes.
um, or like it breaks my heart because I the choirs that I'm involved with and the singing spaces that I'm involved with, we hold such a strong value of singing is for everyone. Period. If you can talk, you can sing. It's not about performance. It's not about getting it perfectly right. It's about getting to there's so many things, but it's about getting to tap into this birthright of our voices, of self-expression, but also like connection. Um, I'm getting misty talking
Yeah,
about
I
this
am.
too, but
But I'm
there's
misty
there's
thinking it's very healing to hear you say that, even though I've heard
mm,
this from other folk singers. I'm always like, haha, yeah, that's great for everybody except me. But like you're saying it and I
yes,
actually
yeah,
believe it because I know you so
mm,
well. I mean, I know them too, but I find it yeah, I'm like very touched and moved because it brings on that ventral vagal of like,
mm,
oh, maybe there are places, maybe we live in a different time, maybe there's like something happening here that could be a corrective experience for my younger self who, yeah, was like publicly shamed, So like, and anyway,
yes,
sorry, I don't
yeah.
mean to interrupt you by
So
being all
no, no,
weepy.
no, no. I'm glad that you're naming that because I mean exactly what you're describing is I think you know okay, so there's layers to this. There's like the clinical thinking about clinical intervention with that part of my brain, but then also just like, my the music educator part of me and just my heart and wanting everybody to get to have this experience. Um, But if I zoom out a little bit into, kind of thinking with my clinical brain, that's the intervention. And to my mind, it's so much better to experience that from a group of people in a way that's actually real, like not
Right.
just lip service, but actually real, than from one individual person, especially if that one individual person happens to be a clinician who you're paying, you know? So I think part of what, and I should back up a little bit. So the third facilitator, along with myself and Serena for this songwriting to meet the moment workshop that we have coming up is Carla Mundy, who is another just amazing powerhouse. Her organization is called Song Roots, and it's based in Vancouver, but she does stuff all over the world. Um, but one of the things that she does is she runs these summer camps on Gambier Island. And I've been actually working for her at these camps for the last 5 years, and it's changed my life. So part of what I think is so powerful about what Carla does as a song leader and as a community builder is she creates a culture. She seeds and like maintains this culture in all of her songwriter spaces where that belief that we all get to sing, we all get to experience that. Like it's just a given. It's just a given. So that piece of culture building, um, and that's part of my role at Carla's things too, is supporting the continuation of that culture that Carla created. And that's part of the culture that I want to bring to the Find Your Song events as well, because that is such a big part of what makes a difference. Like when we get to be in a group with other people who are also singing imperfectly, and we get to witness other people, standing up and trying.
Mhm.
And, maybe they're not getting all the notes perfectly right. And maybe like who knows, it could be torn apart in a million different ways. But to witness people standing up and trying and like actually sharing this piece of themselves in such a vulnerable and beautiful way. And then to witness the really authentic support of everybody else in the room, like that is profoundly healing. So, like, if you were at an event like this, for instance, in like past you wouldn't even have to get up and sing yourself. Like, just the mirror neurons
Mhm.
of getting to witness somebody else having that experience is
Mhm.
huge.
Mhm.
So, I mean, to get even more like clinical about it, um, the things that I'm thinking of, and I should say too, like the events that I'm running, they're not therapy, but
Mhm.
they will be therapeutic.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of thinking about, I'm actually on purpose choosing ways of entering music that are a bit vulnerable. So whether that's songwriting, that can feel super vulnerable for people, especially
Mhm.
if you're sharing it with the world. Um, I'm working on putting together with more Smiley a workshop around connecting with our wild voices and the sort of
Mm.
the landscape of like what are the sounds that we feel
Mm.
comfortable and maybe don't feel comfortable making, and there's all kinds of stuff we could play with there. Improv, so choosing these places of entry point that are a little bit vulnerable, because that's where there's the potential to have these corrective experiences. And of course, we also know that the dose really matters. Like if we go
Mm.
too much, too big, it's going to backfire. It's not going to help. So I'm thinking about how can we titrate this enough that it's the right dose. And like I just said, for if it was you, past you, and I was thinking about how do I want to support Carmen here, I wouldn't have you sing at all at first.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
would I would just want to have you like in that environment and witnessing this different culture and
Mhm.
kind of witnessing that something could be different. Um, and then I'm thinking about like what are the conditions for secure attachment that um, yeah, what are the conditions for secure attachment, and how do we set that up in the container of this group and this event, because that is going to widen people's capacity to, to handle the distress of trying something risky or vulnerable.
Hmm.
And it's going to help people, it's going to help people when they do have those waves of activation to kind of allow them to complete and be able to kind of settle back into that window.
Hmm.
So these are the things that I'm thinking about as I'm, inviting different people to collaborate with. I'm purposefully, asking people who I know get that,
Hmm.
whether they have like the sciencey language for it or not, like they just get it. They
Totally.
know.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, and I'm thinking about those elements of like titration, pendulation, secure attachment, all
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
It's
Yeah.
very, if I may say, it's very numinous network in the sense that of like lots of people show up just to be in the field because we let the
Yeah.
mirror neurons do the work. Seeing people, seeing
Yeah.
other people be met and matched, other people have a corrective experience can enable our own natural latent capacity for healing those parts of us to come on. So we kind of need
Mm-hmm.
to, we call it
Mm-hmm.
priming the pump. Sometimes we got to prime the
Yes.
pump a little, and that's the best way to go. As you were speaking, Erinn, I've already figured out what my songlet is. I don't know what the rhythm or melody is exactly, but it's just you and me. So I'm gonna sing you the first part of my song. Okay.
Yay!
I don't give a fuck, but I
Yeah.
do, I do, I do. It's like, and that's it.
Amazing.
It'll be, I don't give a fuck, but I do, I do, I do, I do, I do in a million different ways,
Oh,
right? So it'll be like really,
oh
really
my God,
strong.
Carmen.
And then,
Oh, oh my gosh. Yeah.
thanks, Erinn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
Oh,
song. And everybody is invited to come up with rhythms for that and melodies for that because I don't really know. But I will work it. I will work it because I feel like
well,
that's me in a nutshell.
I mean, if I can say, like, I was hearing like a really strong rhythm there. I actually really like the rhythm that was happening there, and it seems like that was what was just wanting to come out of you, and it
Yeah.
fits the word. Like, that was beautiful. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
great.
Corrective experience right here. Everybody got to witness. Okay,
Oh,
so this is making me think of something else because so my
mm,
understand is that this project has coalesced at least partly around some ancestral practices that you've been drawn to guide you in this. So I want to hear about that and how others might frame it for themselves. And it's kind of up
mm,
for me right now because a number of years ago I really became interested in Scottish Gaelic language and particularly laments and keening.
mm.
And I
Oh,
did some singing lessons with Sheena McKenna, and we hosted her. She's back east, but she came out west, and I hosted her for a kitchen Kaylee. Opened it up to the neighborhood. People
oh,
came that I didn't know from the neighborhood, and we had a small house. We cramped like 30 people in. And, it's just like, here's some paper. I'm going to teach you a little bit of Scottish Gaelic. We did it for a couple hours. We had a scones and all the things that we could expect
mm,
and bannock. And so I, though, I have a couple of Scottish Gaelic laments that I sing whenever we have to bury an animal or a person, or
yeah.
people tell me somebody's in their dying time, and I'll sing this song for them across the time zones. And I remember singing for Sheena, being like, oh, yeah, I know these songs. And I sang it, and my melody was so different. But she didn't say, that's not how that song goes. She said, oh, the old ones are singing through you because you're taking it in a new direction. She was like, don't change it. This doesn't sound anything at all like how that song is supposed to. It's the words, but it's not the melody. She said, don't change it. So I've just stuck with it. And as you know, we recently had a funeral for our dog, Mona. And my mother and father-in-law were there, and they like left the Mormon church as young people. They have like a lot of religious trauma, so they kind of stay away from that kind of stuff. But they're very into ritual, and they're very good giving in game, as Dan Savage would say, like they're up for it. And so they wanted to attend the burial of Mona on the property.
Mm,
And because we have had to bury other family pets, Ruben and I kind of have a rhythm for how we do a funeral.
mm,
But in this case, I sort of felt the need to explain to them, here's what I'm about to sing. And I thought about it for a half a moment when I was explaining to them, okay, this is a lament where I'm calling the ancestors to come and help. I'm singing from Mona's perspective of one who has just died. And then I just closed my eyes and I just like belted it out, this like plaintive, very loud call. And I just didn't look at them. That's kind of my rhythm. My strategy is I just close my eyes. And then we buried her, and then I said, okay, and now I'm calling the old ones over, and this is the old ones magic. This is kind of like everybody in the Scottish Highlands would know Creagle Craigie. They would know Glen Lyon's Lament, and you would kind of follow this rhythm of these vocables. And so, Ruben can like hum along with it or whatever. So I did the same thing, closed my eyes, and they didn't say anything about it because of course we're at the funeral. But my mother-in-law plays the viola, and she's a musician, she's like, or she's a serious musician. And I was nervous because I'm like, she'll know, like, if I'm off key or whatever, right? But afterwards, a few days later, she said, "Thank you for inviting us. That was so beautiful." And it felt like it felt like a first for me to be like, I'm going to invite people who know me quite well, but not so intimately. I'm going to invite them
mm.
into this intimate moment. And I don't know if they know that it's not just intimate, because this is a depth of grief that, Mona is like my second longest relationship after Ruben, right? So but the fact that I could muster song when I was so sad, and the songs felt so perfect. It felt very intimate when I realized afterwards what I'd done. Like, I was like, wow, they've never seen me like that. And I think the only way I can explain it is that the old ones wanted me to do this. So, yeah, like, is that what you're talking about when you say, or like something similar? Like, there's the practices we can look up and research in a book, but have you found your ancestors guiding you in
Oh,
this work somehow?
I'm teary over here too. Um, yeah, there's so many layers to that. And I want to answer that question, but I want to acknowledge too, in as I was hearing you just now, um, a couple of things. So for one, my whole body was just like I had goosebumps. Um, and especially when you said the only way I can explain it is the old one. I feel my grandfather right there. Yeah, right there. So yeah, and okay, there's so many things I want to say. This is such powerful and beautiful stuff, and I think it touches on um so I mean you and I are both kind of like nerds about this stuff and about like the sciencey bits of it, but there's also this just like deeply, deeply human aspect to singing, to music generally, but to singing especially. Like we just our ancestors have been doing this forever. I think like as long as humans have, been making sounds with our voices, we've been doing this. And I think we just know, we can feel in our bodies without anybody having to tell us or explain it to us that when we sing, and it can happen when we're alone too, but especially when it's being shared, and whether that's with, people who are present or like with, you know, the the more than human realms and the spirit realms, but when we're sharing it one way or another, it connects us with our emotions. It helps us to process things that would otherwise be too big or too confusing or too complicated for us to be with. Um, there's just so much. There's so much there. And I want to say too, like, I'm remembering there's so many pieces here. I'm getting distracted because there's just so many beautiful pieces that I want to like grab here and kind of like hold up for your listeners to look at. Like, see, look at all this cool stuff. But so I recently, so I one of the other parts of my musical life, my dear friend and I, Ali Romano, we started along with some other folks, Anne Marie Long and a couple of other folks, we started a queer choir on Vancouver Island where we live. And we recently had the just joy of bringing this scrappy little choir over to Vancouver for this Canada-wide queer choir festival. And there's so many
That's
amazing,
amazing.
beautiful things about this experience. I could go on and on. I won't. But the specific piece, so on the closing day, we were listening to a number of local performers, and um, there was this, I'm blanking on their name, but there was a group of three Indigenous women who were singing, and it was just their voices and drums. And there had been a really big loss, um, a really important and beautiful musician in the Canadian music scene who was also Indigenous, um, and queer, had died suddenly and unexpectedly, like a day or a couple of days before that. And these women were really close with that person and were really in their grief. Um, and what happened was that what one of the women in particular, um, the expression of the grief was just really present for her. And rather than doing this thing that I think so often we see performers doing of trying to like, push it down, shove it away, whatever, she just stayed with it. So she's there singing, and every once in a while she would weep as she was singing. And sometimes the tears were too much and she couldn't make sound. So she would pause and she would keep playing the drum and she would stay there with these other two women and keep going. And then she would come back in. And this is the one of the pieces that was so powerful about that. It wasn't perfect. Like there were moments when her voice cracked. There were moments when I'm imagining the note probably wasn't what she would ideally be wanting to come out of her mouth, but it was the gift that she gave us of sharing the realness of her grief and the love that was feeding that grief. Like I don't even have words for how powerful that gift was, and it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. Was it the most polished? Was it the most perfect? No, but it was one of the most real and beautiful things I've ever heard. And when I tell you the standing ovation that happened after these women finished singing, like it just didn't end. Um, ugh, it was something else. So, I mean, I've gotten totally off track. I haven't said anything about
Your
ancestors, but
ancestral
just
path,
that
yes.
that piece about like it's to me it's not about being perfect. It's not about that. It's not. Yeah. Anyway, the ancestral piece though, that has been really present for me through this whole thing. Um, and there's a few layers. So one of them being that, yeah, I think you and I share this ancestry of Scottish immigrants who came to Canada during the clearances. And so like these are folks who sang all the time. Um, it was just, part of their day to day. Like there were work songs and there were songs for everything.
Mhm.
And I'm really lucky in that I grew up in Nova Scotia with family in Cape Breton, and Cape Breton is this really interesting sort of cultural bubble where there were so many of these immigrants from the Highlands and the islands during the clearances, um, that there's been a lot of cultural retention over the years. So there's a lot of music, like a lot of the Celtic music and the songs and the dancing that have been retained. Um, and until a few generations ago, language as well, the Gaelic language. And there's, it had sort of started to die off, and then there's been sort of a resurgence in recent years. But so part of yeah, part of my kind of process with coming back into music in these last, 5 or 6 years in a different way was sort of reconnecting with that sense of um, music doesn't have to be about performing. It serves so many other functions. And it can also just be like for the pure joy of it, for the pure pleasure of it. Because I mean, those our people weren't they weren't thinking about being in tune or anything. Like they were just singing. They were doing the thing because that's what you do and it feels good and
Yeah.
it feels right.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so a couple years ago, this was actually through Songbirds, through Carla's project. One of the things that she does is organizes trips to different musical hotspots all over the world, and
Mm.
hires local teachers to teach students about the particular vocal traditions of that place. And so she and
Mm.
I co-organized a trip to Cape Breton.
How neat.
Um, and we learned, we brought a group of people and we learned a bunch of Gaelic singing. Um, so that was really powerful. And the more kind of specific layer for me uh, is my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. Um, so he died a few years ago, but he was a storyteller and a singer and a musician. He was an amazing piano player, but he played like totally by ear. He never learned how to read
Well,
music or anything. He sang in barbershop quartets. Um, and he was so proud of our musical heritage and our musical roots and just loved being around music. And actually when he died, it was early COVID, so I wasn't able to be there right when it happened. I did get home in time to say goodbye, but um, when we found out that he was dying, the local family members all came together to the cottage and they had a ceilidh. That
mm.
was, that was how he spent his last weeks and days and
Mm.
moments surrounded by
Mm.
song.
Mm.
Um, he was also a business guy. He was an entrepreneur, and he and my grandmother ran a hardware business together.
Oh, neat.
So yeah, and so for me as I've been kind of launching this new project, um, although the content is all like super super familiar, like this is my world. There's so much about running this kind of business that
Mm.
is new to me, and it's scary and it's vulnerable. And do I ever need the co-regulation on doing this? It's felt like a really big leap in a lot of ways. So my one of the things that I do in times like that when um, yeah, when I'm in need of that support, is I kind of, put out an invitation and I ask if there are any ancestors who would like to be with me and like to support me in whatever the
Yes.
thing is. And my grandfather was one of the ones who came forward.
Oh.
Um, and you know, I think I just have the sense that he's just fucking delighted. Like he's just yeah,
Yeah.
this would so be his jam.
Yeah.
He would love this so much.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, yeah, and then actually there were two. So my grandfather and also my stepmother Linda. So my dad was married to this woman, and unfortunately she died quite young of cancer. But um, she had this wonderful um, this there's this quality of wanting everybody to feel like they belong that
Mhm.
feels like uh, um, so aligned with the values that I want to be embedded in this project. And she had like some pretty amazing business acumen as well. So
Nice. So
that's
we welcome
my
them.
ancestral team who's
That's
I can
amazing.
feel very much in my office with me right now as we're having this
Mhm.
conversation.
So in these times, just like as we're moving to wrap, I still want to bring people into even more belonging. Why do joy and connection and belonging and music, all of that together, and music, why do they matter so much in these times to you and to presumably you're doing this because you feel like it's fitting into some bigger picture in some way?
Yeah. Um, I mean, here we are living in collapse times. Here we are trying to survive capitalism. Like these times. So if I think about it again through this SE lens and what this is doing to our bodies and our nervous systems, the demands of these times are for many of us more than what our bodies and our nervous systems have the ability to meet. Like there's just this constant chronic stress of we call it allostatic overload. Like the demands are just more than most human bodies have the ability to do. And I'm sure this will be familiar for most of your listeners, but like our bodies can't do that forever. Like our bodies are really good at like when when things are functioning smoothly, they're really good at moving into those states of higher arousal for a period of time to meet like a temporary demand.
Yeah.
But then they need to be able to settle into that parasympathetic, that rest place or that social engagement place where we're present and connected in order to have the capacity to then mobilize again to meet the next need for sympathetic activation. Um, so these, for many reasons, the times that we're in, I think, are leaving many people in this place of overwhelm, like chronic overwhelm. Because part of what can happen when we're in these states of chronic stress in an ongoing way, without breaks, without pauses, um, we our windows that zone where we're able to be connected and present actually shrinks, right? So our capacity is shrinking. Um, and these times that we're in, like they need us to be able to be present. And I mean like both, for us as individuals in order to like survive and maybe even thrive just in life,
Yeah.
as well as these times that we're in where there's so much happening that needs us to do something,
Hmm.
right? So I mean whether we're talking about like trying to slow down climate collapse,
Hmm.
or more likely adapting to the climate changes that are happening and will continue to happening as this collapse continues to unfold, or whether we're talking about like what was happening in Minneapolis, or there's a million things.
Hmm.
If we don't have the capacity to be present, or we don't have the capacity to mobilize, we're in trouble. We're
Yeah.
really in trouble, right? So to me, like the things that help us to increase our capacity, the things that help us grow our ability to be present and connected and to meet the moments of our
Hmm.
lives and of our times.
Hmm.
Joy, um, secure attachment, like being able to dip into safe enough social connection via contact nutrition,
Yeah.
um, sensory pleasure. Like these are kind of the things. And so for me, like when we're connecting with me, because music does all of these things, right? Especially if we're singing together, it can do all of those things.
Hmm.
So that's the goal for me is helping people to come back into that place, like through the all of the co-regulation that's happening and all the stuff that we've been talking about, to come back into that place where they can be connected with themselves, be connected with each other, be connected with what's happening around them, and and have the capacity to experience joy. because that's the fuel,
Yeah.
right? Like if we don't have the ability to land in these moments of joy and pleasure and connection,
Mhm.
we don't have the fuel that we need to
Exactly.
keep going.
Yeah, we
So
need
this is
rest,
kind
but
of
we
my
also need
overall.
renewal, right? We need
Totally,
inputs as well. We
totally.
can't just be like, okay, I need to pause or I need to ground, I need to like down my
Yes,
tools, I need to whatever. It's like we also need to fill our cup a little bit.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's, even just in even like I know my neurons have been flaring, right? Just even the thought that people could be renewed and replenished and resourced has been resourcing for me. And yeah, it makes total sense to me that like there are many different kinds of rest and they're all important. And but also we need inputs of
Hmm.
inspiration and connection and those kinds of mirror neurons. It's a very efficient
Yeah.
way to experience that resourcing. So along with singing, you've just given us like a really nice feast of ideas of things that we could do to cope with grief and rage. But are there other things
Hmm.
along with singing that you are employing to cope with grief and rage these days?
Hmm. Um, yeah, so definitely singing. Um, I mean, for me, that the various practices kind of come back to making space for those emotions to actually be and and be present inside of myself and to move through so that they can complete and I've got room for the next wave of grief or rage or whatever. So for me, like I would say like with rage in particular, with anger in particular, um, like many of us, I was socialized to, to believe that like that we're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to be angry. We're not supposed to express anger. That's bad in some way. So for me, that the practice around coping with rage is a lot of titration. Um, and I think it's also pretty common that I experience this myself, and I think lots of folks do. Uh, when there's anger that comes up, it's easy to go into freeze. Um, so for me, part of the titration and part of the like making space for it is, okay, what can I do? What's one tiny thing that I can move my body and do? Just to, it's like doing the um, doing reps at the gym, right? Like
Yeah,
building this muscle of allowing anger to be present in my body without dissociating, without
right.
freezing, and actually being with the that healthy, needed sympathetic activation that comes with anger. So I'm actively building my capacity to hang out with anger because we need it. I need it. We all need it. Um, yeah, and singing is one of the ways that helps a lot with that. The co-regulation of like here we are in this together and we're all okay. It really helps certainly my nervous system to kind of settle into like, oh yeah, here we are. It's safe enough. We don't have to disappear. It's
Right,
okay.
right. Well, this conversation has given me that feeling of like, oh, right, okay, we're okay. We're okay in this moment. But there
Hmm.
are tools and technologies that are
Yeah.
actually, you know, very available to me as a mammal that could help. And it's really quite a comfort to experience them together. So we weren't
Hmm.
like harmonizing in one melody, but this conversation has felt very connective. So thank you so much for coming on the show to share this with us, Erinn. I'm excited
Hmm.
for people to go to your website. I'll put it all in the show notes, but more than that, it's just they got to have the feelings of a corrective experience or some like great little mirror neurons firing off, being like, yeah,
Hmm.
joy, yeah, pleasure, yeah, connection. So thanks for making that possible today.
Well, thanks so much, Carmen. It's a delight chatting with you as always.
I do. Yes, I actually do care. This is why you should go on this retreat. If you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you are feeling voiceless and powerless in collapse, you will get mobilized and energized and inspired and a little juiced up, just like I did just now. And I've made some really great friends on retreats like this type of retreat. It's, people that I just really resonated with at different times in my life. And it's so good to find your hive, your group that vibes together, because you all get some fundamental thing about what's important in times like these. So I think you should go. Facilitated by Serena Partridge, Carla Mundy, and of course today's guest, Erinn. Students can expect 4 beautiful days of deeply supported songwriting, group process, co-regulation, and collective singing, with a strong focus on writing simple yet powerful songlets to meet these times we're living through. Students will be gently guided to explore and move through the challenges of sharing our voices with the world. You will leave with concrete nervous system-based tools that you can bring home to your people, your communities, and to bring your own song practices alive. So, as I said, registration closes August 22nd, and links are in the show notes, or go to findyoursong.co. So there's a fun thing that's happening right now, orbiting around music and singing and vocal prosody, one of those functions of contact nutrition. And it's happening between this podcast and another podcast hosted by my friend, Kristen. So Kristen's podcast is called the Stoner Story Witch podcast. And I'm not really sure how she frames the stoner part. I think that might be about like her process of claiming her identity publicly as someone who partakes in plant medicine to commune with the divine, to touch inspiration. I'm not really sure how she frames that, but I do know that the story part of her podcast is like her analysis of pop culture, specifically movies and TV shows, through an intersectional lens of attachment and collapse. So I've been on the Stoner Story Witch podcast like a couple times before, offering my take, my analysis from the perspective of somatic attachment. We talked about the first season of that is it Apple Prime? I don't know. That show Severance. That show Severance with that guy, Adam Scott? Am I thinking Michael Scott? Okay. Anyway, that show Severance. We talked about that. And then we also talked, in a different season, she was talking about heated rivalry. So Kristen and her friend Jamie were analyzing that. And I sort of popped in with some voice notes about that. Anyhow, Kristen's producing a season right now based on our voice notes going back and forth. And the season unfolding now until my book comes out in November, it's supposed to be about like evolving attachment, to shift it from like a mentor-mentee type of relationship to more of a friendship dynamics, and how that relates to contact nutrition. And we seem to have found this thread that began with my dog Mona passing. I really want to thank you again for the continued outpouring of empathy and love that you have sent our way with her passing. I really feel seen in how folks are like taking in all the rituals we've done. If you've commented, you've left me DMs and voice notes and different things about what has stood out to you, what really touched your heart. We continue to leave a little bit of steak in Mona's dog bowl every Friday night, which is our steak night. I greet her every morning when I go feed the horses, where I can see her gravestone, and every night I say goodnight to her when I feed them at night. And sometimes I rub the stone that's at our front door, the stone that Reuben took from when he was digging her grave, and he like placed it on the planter. And sometimes I just kind of rub it like I'm petting her. Anyway, I digress. So this theme, this like musical thread, this vocal prosody thread, it started with that episode. Mona is an ancestor now. And then Colette Baron Reid was on this show sharing about her new album. And like another sidetrack here, I have her song, The Impossible Life, from her new album, which is called My Dark Church. You can find it on Bandcamp. I've got it on repeat because I'm writing the outline for a fiction story. And this fiction story is actually, it's inspired quite a bit. I am very inspired by the fact that Kristen, Stoner Story Witch podcast Kristen, is publishing her own fanfic publicly. She's been working on it for a couple of years. She has like a creativity coven and like she's putting it out now. And I find this so impressive and brave. And I was like, you know what? I think, yeah. So I had the Mona episode where I spoke about singing Gallic laments and what their purpose is in my spiritual life. And then Colette came on and was just like being such an inspiration for this idea that like it's never too late to try something you'd love to do, right? You should always pursue your dreams. And then Kristen published an episode of the Stoner Story Witch podcast where she shared a recording of a song. Like, friends, I'm talking like a fully produced and sound mixed song, like a song you could like sell because it sounds really good, that she and her husband Kevin performed to honor the passing of our dog Mona. I can't even, I was like beside myself. It's so, I mean, this is what I'm talking about, friends. This is like when people understand the assignment of what ritual practice and understanding how to use ceremony and ritual as a giveaway to your community to help us all grow and mature spiritually. I've been saying that like what people have learned about how we approach Mona's passing teaches them about what they should do when I pass or when Ruben passes. Anyway, sorry, I keep digressing. Now, this episode with Erinn, where I just like come up with a songlet off the top of my head, it just all seems very synchronous and cool. I just thought you might enjoy like the invisible threads connecting these shows, these people, these themes across time and space. I think that adds some like multidimensionality to this whole experience we're having as like co-creators between Kristen and I, but between us and listeners, us and guests, you know. It's like Easter eggs, you know, it's a deep cut, if you want to put it that way. Anyway, if you want to track that parallel path, I will drop the links in order in the show notes. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, Kristen's having me on her show throughout this season through voice notes. And we're talking about contact nutrition as in the lead up to my book coming out. So I have just revealed the cover of my next book on Instagram. My next book is called How to Connect, Build Strong Bonds and Deep Connections Through Contact Nutrition. No matter your attachment style, trauma history, or neurotype, I want to say your pre-order makes a huge difference because it enables us to have like a large enough initial print run to ensure that we're going to have stock to get through the holiday season, because it would be such a shame to go out of stock, like right smack in the middle of the season where over 70% of the books sold all year are going to be sold, right? So if you plan to purchase, please do so like today, if you can. Also, thank you so very, very, very much to everyone who has already ordered. It just, oh, as I say, just like this whole thing is like taking years off my life. But anyway, it makes such a huge difference. And I see everybody's names and I know who you are, or at least I get the sense of who you are, and that feels great. I also want to add a little thank you to Frida Pinto. I'm going to start reading out some of the advance praise over the next few episodes. So thank you to BAFTA nominated and SAG Award winning actress Frida Pinto, who read my book, an advance copy, and said, Quote, Contact Nutrition is a must-read for anyone who yearns to find a practical and attainable solution to conflict patterns. It is an undeniable handbook that will perfectly complement or even save you time in therapy. Carmen has distilled the essence of contact nutrition into very digestible language. So if you are at a communication impasse and you've tried it all, this might just be the missing piece of the puzzle. Thank you, Frida. You can order my book at ninthhousepressbookstore.com. Once again, I highly, highly recommend you purchase the Power Reader bundle of all 6 titles from the debut catalog. That's how you'll get free shipping and 15% off. The books will arrive early November, just in time for that gift-giving season. And I would encourage you to just read them all and then gift the ones to people that you know will love them. Pre-order now at ninthhousepress.com or ninthhousepressbookstore.com. Finally, in case you missed it, 12 Days of Trance Work is coming up in the Numinous Network starting August 3rd. So it's from 9 to 9:30 a.m. Pacific. I'm leading guided meditation and I'm taking requests. I'm like the DJ. What kind of trance work would you like? What kind of hypnosis would you like? Call me up. So basically you show up on Zoom and you drop in the chat whatever your body, mind, and spirit need to hear. And then I weave that into the hypnosis journey to help give your soul a reset and to affirm and validate your needs. I am recording the sessions, so you'll be able to listen to them later if you can attend like live at that time. So even though you won't get to make your own request, I'm sure you'll want what everyone else is having, right? Because we do this monthly in the Numinous Network at a session called Care for the Caregiver. And it's always great. It's just always great because you're like, oh yeah, I want what she wants. I'll have what she's having. But this 12-day immersion, it's kind of like a waypoint between the season of like sun and summer and all this and the season of snow and winter when we observe 12 days of Yuletide with daily altar time. So like in the Numinous Network, that's like part of our rhythm. It's every Yuletide we do altar time, just like this, 9 to 9:30 a.m. Pacific, drop in little trance work for the day. And we're a little less than 6 months away from that. Maybe I should have done this in June or something, but I just thought of it because I need it. And I see my clients need it. And I see the people who are showing up on calls really need it. So this is like our waypoint, midway, a little over midway through the year. We're going to like drop in, recenter, reconnect. When you sign up as a member of the Numinous Network, you'll be able to attend this and all the other supportive live events. They happen almost daily, and all of them are drop-in. Most of them are camera optional. So treat yourself to some emotional support, mental support, spiritual support this month, and join us today. You can learn more about the Numinous Network at carmenspanyola.com. CarmenSpagnola. Till next time, take care.